I'm happy to get started. I'll share my screen real quick just so we can talk through the agenda.
All right.
You able to see that okay? Probably a little zoomed out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're hoping to just, do brief introductions and agenda review. I think everybody here knows each other. Review the strategic plan discussion that we had in the 6:15 meeting. Then Mickey and I can kind of walk through some of the feedback that we received from members of the community and kind of how that process worked. And then we can talk through what next steps look like. We had public comment on there. As of right now, it does not appear that there are any members of the public. So we may end up not having that.
Okay.
Great. All right. So we want to just, since we all know each other, should we just get to number 2?
I think
sounds
so.
great.
Yeah.
Real quick, just acknowledging I'm attending this meeting. If I may not participate, if you don't need or want me to, I'm just here and I got thoughts and ideas and you can let me know how much you want me to participate. So as Commissioner DeBell.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be great under public comment, for sure. If you have anything. So I guess going to back to June, if we recall June. Maybe some staff could kind of remind Kat and myself, like what were some of the things that I mean, I know we said we wanted to come and have some feedback before we sort of moved on to the next step. But from what I'm remembering, and correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't any like substantive changes that we made.
No,
No.
we
Yes.
pretty much wanted to put the strategic goals out there.
Yep.
And then allow people time to talk about them.
Yep.
And then come back, address any of the conversational pieces that did come up, and then bring those back for final approval, with the thought of, obviously COIC will have some input also to that.
Yep.
If we go forward.
Yeah, and that timeline. So how I kind of remember things going was, we had talked and we'd had strategic planning subcommittee had met between the May and June board meetings and had kind of looked at what was proposed from the Emergency Homelessness Task Force. And we had talked through that, some of those action items kind of envisioned the CHRO operating differently than it actually does today. And so some of that like authority to have cities or the county do things, some of that language needed to be changed. And so we had broken those 5 priorities up and assigned them to a few staff and board members as well. We all kind of took our initial stab at changing them, making sure that each priority was really fleshed out and was clear on what the expectation was. We brought that back to the full board meeting on the 5th, or to the full board on the meeting in the 15th. The board was supportive of the proposed changes, and then the board had expressed interest in sharing this with the community before it was officially voted on. So between the 15th and today, we have Mickey and myself have shared the proposed updated plan with a really broad swath of the community. We put together a survey, and we also did just some, communicating with folks that participated in the Emergency Homelessness Task Force. I think it probably hit over 1,000 people's inboxes, the survey did, and we got some responses, and a lot of the feedback
If you did
was
1,000 outgoing emails, what are some responses? What percentage? Like 5 responses, 50 responses?
It was a very low response rate. I will say the survey, we received two survey responses, and we had verbal conversations Mickey and I did with probably 6 people, and then we followed up via email, encouraging people that participated in the Emergency Homelessness Task Force, like, if the survey is not a good method for giving us your feedback, just go ahead and let us know. And the vast majority of folks had just said, it's fine as is, no comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
And
I
yeah.
guess that's a good thing, right? If there were a lot of problems with it, you always hear from people when they're not liking something, right? Not the other way around. So
Absolutely.
we know that as elected officials as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No doubt. And if you can recall back in February of this year, when there was some slight indication that we would be making some changes, you heard from a lot of people. So
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very happy to report, like, we didn't make the paper with the proposed plan changes. So like, I think, I definitely am taking things, it sounds the same way as you guys are. Like, folks are interested, seem, or maybe disinterested, and just are kind of like happy with the way that things are going. Doesn't seem like there is an overexcitement about the way that things are going, but there's definitely not like a bunch of pushback either.
So in going through, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, I'm running, like I said, between appointments, but are they comfortable with more of a project management and kind of the breakdown of like incident command and different organizational subcommittees versus an executive officer just running the whole show? Did we hear anything about the proposed changes there?
That was not in the strategic plan, that kind of
It's
like
more
leadership
yeah.
structure. Yeah, and
Okay.
so I have not gotten any feedback from folks. Mickey,
Well,
have
and
you
we
heard
talked
anything
about it
from
at the
folks?
last meeting, so I'm sure that they would have been a relevant comment since you were having those substantial conversations outside of the survey. I was wondering if any of that came up, so I feel good about that as well.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When there were times I would mention that there's a possibility that it could be like a project management type of leadership as opposed to an executive director, there were no pushback on that one as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And so to share just a few like specific comments from folks, just because Mickey and I put together this beautiful 1.5 pager, mostly Mickey. So a few like explicit quotes from folks that might be helpful. Someone said that they'd like to see the following areas enhanced. They'd like to see community engagement. In that piece, they'd like to see us ensure that elected officials understand local data and facts so that myths are not perpetuated in public, and public action can be grounded in evidence-based practices. Under the align with the continuum of care priority, this person had said that they're interested in additional financially supporting the continuum and aiding in capacity development. Under the enhancing data priority, this person would like us to work with existing HMIS lead agency to determine gaps in infrastructure and data usage. And then under the improve access to all types of shelter priority, support best practices for staff training and capacity building at local shelters.
And so the HMSI lead agency is Neighbor Impact, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's good. I like that.
Another person said that they want to emphasize the importance of community engagement under priority 1. They strongly feel that many Bend residents thwart efforts to develop managed campgrounds, safe parking, tiny home villages, etc., because they believe it will attract more people that need help. It's so hard to read and hear the awful things people say about the homeless in our community. I wish they could understand many are longtime residents that have fallen on hard times. They are our neighbors, people I went to Mountain View High School with that can no longer afford to live in the only place they have ever called home. Another member said, I like the specificity and depth of the EHTF strategic plan, and I would like to see that document at least referenced in the new CHRO strategic plan. Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Ben Lapine School Board member, said that there's a need for homeless students in Deschutes County to have access to transportation with direct routes from shelters to school and activities. McKinney-Vento has the funding, but the school does not have a license, nor is there currently an agency that provides this service. Any support to create access would be helpful. Finally, a service provider had said that please make it a priority to support the Homelessness Leadership Coalition and bolster the coordinated entry system with additional resources. I think that's a common theme that we've repeatedly heard. And then finally, just some other feedback that's not directly attributed to anyone or quoted. There are questions about what other community strategic plans look like compared to ours. And I will say that Mickey and I kind of dug into that a little bit. And what we found is that all the communities are kind of approaching this differently, and there isn't a template for what a strategic plan looks like. This is a pilot program, and so I think the state kind of expects folks to throw some things at the wall and really see what sticks. So just to respond to that specifically, there is a desire to see a mission and vision statement accompanying the CHRO strategic plan. So someone who had participated in the EHTF had said like, oh, well, before we had kind of some preamble pages to the strategic plan, and I think they'd like to see that in the updated one. There's a desire for the CHRO to do more advocacy, apprehension about the referenced community fund and how it may be seen as competing with already successful fundraising programs through local nonprofits.
We put the community fund in the strategic plan. I thought we took that out because that was the one piece I adamantly felt was the wrong place because we are not a 501c3 collector of funds.
As of right now, it is still in there, but definitely willing to have a conversation about.
Yeah, I think that's an inappropriate place for that. Totally. I mean, I think we help people with organizational and other stuff, but I don't know if it is our job to be collecting money like that, like a competition. And I know we had that heated conversation, and it wasn't very heated, but had it. And I think that it's not the right place.
I think we ended up changing the wording as sort of like a compromise to say that not that we expect it to be housed or even managed by the coordinated office. Remind me again. I don't have a strategic plan.
No,
I think we changed.
I
What
do
does it
remember
say
that.
now? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think you changed it to support philanthropy and empower the community to support the work.
Oh.
Which is fine, but
Yeah.
no way, shape, or form should that be understood as we are going to be collecting funding and distributing it at that level, because that's a whole different group.
Yeah, I think that the wording, so they may have been looking at a previous version.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then the final comment, and this is something I think we've heard a bunch before too, is much of the identified work in the strategic plan will require time and energy from an already constrained provider group. Providers require ongoing funding to sustain and expand services. Consideration for future general fund dollars from the provider network or for the provider network should be considered. So maybe not that we've heard specifically about general fund dollars being directed to the provider network, but I think we've heard and hopefully acknowledged that like providers are pretty tapped in terms of their capacity. So
Yeah, I think it would be really amazing if while we're going down this path, and again, not our job, but to teach these service provider organizations how to have an actual organizational business plan that does have a profit piece that brings in funding, whether it's a managed camp that has, low income funding, whether there's some other opportunities there to create a low rent workforce housing that offsets the people that aren't paying for housing. I mean, there's all sorts of different places we need to start helping them think outside of the box of just living off of grants and funding that is provided by other people. And that might be one of the steps that we should be looking at as an advisory board to say, what does this look like to run a business? Because this actually has an articulate part of what they're doing. They're in the business of assisting people, and you don't run a business plan on a $0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that concerns me when I'm looking at that feedback, and I appreciate it, is it's a lot of like, funding, and I get it. I mean, that is obviously a huge issue, but where is that coming from? It's definitely not going to be able to the cities aren't going to be able to fund all of our service providers, with the limited dollars that we have. The coordinated office is not going to be, it said one of them was like
Exactly.
the coordinated office funding, like that's so I think Kat, like I agree with you, like, creative ways that we can look at
Help them find a supportive business model. I think that is really critical. This is not something that's going to continually support itself, and without that, everything we fund will fail.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
from what I recall, and I'll double check with Executive Director of Central Oregon Health Council, I believe that they're coming up with something similar as well. some sort of program this coming fall. Maybe it's something we could partner with them or leverage or amplify, enhance, and I'll follow up with her and then I'll share it with all once I have that info.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you, Mickey.
Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge that there are some providers that I'm aware of that do have that successful business model. And I think of like, I mean, maybe not specifically, well, some homelessness service providers, but I like the first thing that comes to mind is like Habitat for Humanity, right? Where they operate the restore, they bring in revenue through that, and then they're able to use that to impact their cause.
So creative business models, yes.
Yeah, and so like another example, and this is, I guess, just like a slight heads up for next week when we meet, but we're going to hear from St. Vincent de Paul of Bend. Gary Hewitt is the executive director, and I just did a tour I believe it was 2 weeks ago. They did like an open house for the new tiny home village that they opened, and Gary has this really interesting, well, St. Vincent de Paul of Bend has this really interesting business model where they own a bunch of homes and they rent them out and they bring in income that way, and then they're able to use some of that to like support folks who need a little bit of extra help, and they're also able to build that pipeline. So I think that's a great idea, Councilor Zwicker, and hopefully that piques a little bit of interest for next week's presentation.
Well, I agree, and thank you for bringing that to us, because I think if we're working to support all these people in our community, that the idea is they have to become somewhat self-sufficient to sustain their model, because otherwise it's just an ongoing drain, and people will start to push back and lose interest if they don't see results that are related to that. And this actually will help with peer-supported services as well.
Totally. And I do want to, on the flip side, say that like I don't think I'm not trying to like cast any blame or anything on folks that don't have a business model that supports that, but it would be, I think, something that hopefully we could be helpful in. It's like, if you are interested in that, in increasing your funding streams, and it isn't just waving a magic wand and getting more money from a city or the county, like let's think about how we can increase that. Whether it is, providing a service that we can charge for or something, but acknowledging that providers like maybe Fuse, who does like permanent supportive housing, there may not be a way that they're able to get money from clients, but maybe they offer like, you know, a restore type deal or something like that.
When they're doing permanent supportive housing, someone's helping offset those costs. So if they're owning the housing that they're utilizing, at some point, some of that people are going to have SSI and other income that can be for small modulated costs. Is it 100%? No, but now you're taking away that piece of the pie and putting it into a 30 or 20% AMI model. That's totally acceptable, as long as, you know, we're not just, you know, everything is 0, 0, 0, 0, and then that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and the master lease, you know, concept, I think that's another important way for a lot of these service providers to get something on the books, you know, get an asset on the books. So that's another direction. I know that, you know, Cheyenne did a lot of work with that, and that there are organizations in the community that are interested in supporting that kind of concept too. So.
Yeah, there's good news coming from COIC soon. I don't want to be the one to break it, but we should expect to be hearing hopefully something soon on that.
Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I guess, Kat, does anything change is there anything that we should be changing based on what we've just heard about? What do you think? I mean, do we have to shore up the engagement piece, or do you think we think it's pretty solid so far as is?
Do we need to maybe, well, I guess we probably have. I was wondering if we should have a session with COIC if they're considering taking this on and making sure that the language is covering what they think, or no, just because they've been listening, I'm sure.
Will Tammy be at our meeting next week?
I believe so. I believe she plans on attending. Yeah.
The city and county administrators have been meeting kind of alongside this process to check in with Tammy. She has not mentioned any concerns with the strategic plan and how it should.
And I think I feel like as long as that we're all on the same page, I'm good to move forward with what we have.
Can I ask one question? Do you feel like it's important to include some of that like preamble stuff, the mission statement and the vision from the past
I
strategic
find that
plan?
fraught with peril because people often mistake a mission statement and a preamble for the goals. And
Mhm.
it takes their eyes off the prize. So I would prefer not to. And if we want to go down that path, I'd rather wait until we're housed, where we're going to be
Gotcha.
housed and do something there.
I agree with you for slightly different reasons. I think that because it was very different with the task force because it was a year-long process, a large group of people coming together. I think this is just a different situation. And so I don't feel comfortable as a board. I don't think we're kind of there yet with a common, vision and goals yet. I would love to get there eventually. But I think the office needs to be a little bit more stable and
I agree.
Gotcha. Thank you. And do you, I guess, if there's a little bit of a lull and there's some airtime for me, we had talked, and I know that Cheyenne had kind of talked at length about when she had kind of proposed her version of the strategic plan. And then we had kind of like talked about, well, there's a strategic plan and then there's the work plan. And I don't know, like, do you have thoughts on how we kind of pick and choose what the priorities are here? Or do you think that that's another thing that we kind of just wait and see
I think
how
we wait to see where we're
office lands?
housed, because that's going to open up different resources and different assets to us, depending on how that goes, which I feel very positive about. But then we can sit down and start saying we need these subcommittees in this direction, and then go back to that more of that project director incident management style, and that will set our goals and priorities under that strategic plan. But I don't want to just get over our ski tips again by trying to say what we want to do and putting it in stone and then getting there and having them go, wait a minute, that doesn't work because this is why.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think that implementation is obviously the next step, but just getting this done, considering where we were a few months ago, is
Totally
really remarkable.
Yeah.
So, take our wins.
Absolutely.
For now. Great. So I think then we can probably bring it to the full group on Thursday and
Yes.
and see what happens on Thursday.
Yeah,
Right?
and I feel pretty good about it. And as far as where it's general, it's broad strokes, but that gives us the ability to be more nimble and add as we move to the new office.
And so
for the Thursday meeting, do you want to ask that the full board support it and submit it to the state? I mean, as a draft.
Yes, because we're on a timeline. Are you comfortable with that, Megan?
I am very comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think it's been well vetted. Yeah.
And it gives us time if there's something they're uncomfortable with to come back to us and ask us for a correction rather than last minute. So yes, I'd rather see it going in July than last minute August.
That's a really good point.
Chris, does a draft agenda prompt that?
I don't have the vote right now, but I can update it and add that. And I did want to ask, as staff is preparing packet materials for this agenda item, are you interested in seeing the feedback that we shared, this like 1.5 pager, or the whole proposed strategic plan, or both? Or something else?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of hide anything. So maybe, I mean,
well, I think the strategic plan points that we talked about, obviously, because we're voting on them, we have to share. And it'd be nice to say, here's the comments we did get back. So
Perfect.
Let's put it all out there.
It's good to get the information. People
That
can
sounds
read
great.
it, not read it, but at least it's out there.
Perfect. We'll do that. And then I'll spell out the vote right on the agenda so we know
that
that's expected.
Okay. Great.
Well,
look at that.
Snap.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there any? Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything else, or do we want to open?
Commissioner Devon might want us to go to public comment. He might have something to add.
If you're ready for that.
He says that like we're going to get it.
So, well, yeah. So, as I say, when I'm involved with the State Interoperability Executive Council, and interoperability is referring to multiple agencies working together during bad situations, incidents in response to whatever. So I'm just starting to be an advocate of the National Incident Management System, NIMS, NIMS, and Incident Command or Incident Recovery. There's some really interesting book work done at a national level about how you put an operations group together. What are we going to do with what resources in the next 1 week or month or 3 months, whatever. You just put pieces together like that. Planning group, putting projects together for the operations group. Logistics, do we have the resources to do this operation or not? How long will it take to get the next whatever? And then keeping track of finances. Also, public information officer. So if you think about it, when we have a forest fire and it gets, it gets big real fast, all of a sudden it steps up in the incident management system. It can be either led by an incident manager, a person called the incident commander, or joint information command, this fire department and this city working together because there's multiple interests involved. So as I say, when I talk about this, I'm just advocating for the fact that there's some really good best practices in managing and getting a lot of people at the table. One of the things that happens is, an interested party will come in and say, I don't care what your plan is. I don't like it. And I don't think we should do this. It's like, well, how about we get people at the table doing planning and talking about different parts and pieces? Not everybody's going to like it, but then a decision could be made with informed, making sure everybody's heard. It's awkward when somebody comes in and just tries to veto with just passion and not really even the authority to do that. So it's just, and I've been in that spot. People give us the what for quite a few times on this topic of homeless. And we, to try to take it and go some direction with all the input. So that's my message of the day. As I say, I'd like to join the larger meeting here next week and, share this information also. As a sitting commissioner, we get a lot of information from people saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? If we have an incident command, we can start putting in the public response PIO, or here's an idea and I can hand it to somebody, because right now we're all getting information. And, I'd like to engage with somebody that's passionate on the subject, but if the coordinated homeless office is kind of the front end of this, who can I hand information off to? So as I say, I've got a need and I'm proposing just an idea for some structure. So that's
And
my
I think that
message of the
fits
day.
in with kind of the project management and core 3 style goals that we've talked about in the background. So that might be good to get those best practices and just look at them.
And then, as I say, as a commissioner, I'd like to offer to be, on committee work. If we have a 5-person CHRO board, maybe other interested parties can get involved with the committees too. So that's how I got motivated to join you today.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
I do not see any other members of the public here for public comment.
Oh, nobody loves us. Nobody. Okay, so Megan, any thoughts? Processes that we missed?
I don't think so.
Okay, I saw Tammy at a Rotary luncheon the other day, so she's kind of excited for next steps as well. So that should be good.
Yeah. I'm feeling good. Yeah, we have our, have you had your meeting yet, Kat? Yeah, Redmond, have you?
Yes.
Okay, you had your, okay. So we're last. We're the night before, so.
Yeah, we haven't, we brought it forward that it was just going to be a new IGA. So
Yeah.
we're not really, there's no non-support of it. We're just waiting for what that's going to look like.
Okay, great.
And I do believe that Sisters and Lapine have met and discussed as well. Sisters I believe Sisters Council was supportive.
Yep.
La Plana, I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't able to watch, and I asked for the recording, and they sent me a public records request form and said I could pay for it. So I feel like I might have rubbed somebody the wrong way. So I'm gonna go at it from a different angle, but I have not heard yet how La Plana thought about it.
That's really funny.
Wow.
We'll follow up with the
okay.
city manager. I was hoping that the
No.
mayor would be on this call and
Yeah.
save him an email in his inbox, but since he wasn't on this call, I'll follow up with the city manager.
And
Yeah,
I'll
he
make
gets pretty
sure.
busy up there. So yeah, if we need something more formal, Chris, let me know, but this is coming down the pike conversation at the city. There was no vote or anything held.
Yeah,
But
I heard your comments. I listened to the recording yesterday.
Yeah.
And I heard your brief comments. So glad that moved forward without a hitch, and excited to hear how it goes next week with the Bend City Council, and then we'll have our marching orders, it sounds like.
Sounds good.
All right, perfect.
Awesome.
All right,
Well,
guys, somebody go out and enjoy the hot weekend.
thank you all so much. I'll make sure to send the recording of this meeting to Mayor Richards so he's informed on what happened, and
Thank
we'll be
you.
in touch next week.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good
Bye.
weekend. Bye.